Hey everybody, it's Shane and I'm in the Rotate MD-11. I've been meaning to make this video for a while, and today we're going to be talking about the MD-11's Flight Control Panel, or FCP. On a Boeing you'd call this an MCP, but this is an FCP. So I'm going to go over the basic functions of this thing and kind of explain to you how all the knobs and buttons work on here. It's simplistically complex. I don't know how else to explain this thing. There's a lot of buttons on here, but they do a lot of things. So we're going to go from the top, left to right, and then center, and then bottom. So this button up here just allows you to switch between Mach and IA, indicated airspeed. This is between heading and track. You can see the difference here. Track is like the direction your plane is physically flying in, and the heading is the way the direction the nose is pointing, magnetic. This is the button to switch between feet and meter. For those people who fly in China or Russia or wherever where they use meters, you can switch there. This button is between vertical speed and flight path angle. So vertical speed was going to give you like feet per minute, right? The flight path angle is going to give you a little indicator of your actual flight path through the air, and will also allow you to set a angle to climb or descend at. This is very useful in situations where you want to fly an actual flight path angle down to the runway. For example, you want to fly a 4-degree glide slope, or here's a good example. Going into San Diego, you want to fly a 3.5-degree glide path angle down to the runway, because that one is more than the usual 3 degrees per second, or 3 degree glide path angle, and you don't know how to do math, and you don't know how many feet per minute that relates to. Flight path angle will give you this indicator on the PFD and allows you to set the angle here. Alright, cool. Now you know what those buttons do. Now let's go left to right. This is your speed knob, and it allows you to do a couple things. You can increase or decrease speed by turning the knob left to right. Now, each button on this FCP has a push and a pull function. So if you hold your mouse to the top of the button, you'll see an up arrow. If you hold the mouse button down, you'll see a down arrow. For this particular button, if you push it, what that's going to do is it's going to capture the current speed you're at and maintain it. When you do that, you'll see that your flight mode annunciator changes from magenta to white. White means this is a pilot commanded setting that is not what the FMC is thinking is optimal. Okay, so when I push that in, it's going to capture the speed that we're currently at. Now, I'm going to click FMS speed, and you see this goes back to magenta. Let's say I want to go ahead and manually increase our speed. So I'll click, for example, Mach. We'll increase our speed to Mach 0.85. Okay. To execute my command, I'm going to pull the knob out. So I'm going to move the mouse to the bottom of the knob, and now you'll see our speed is increasing here. We now have 0.850 thrust. It's white because I entered that, but to get this commanded value in, I have to pull the knob out. So pushing it in captures the heading, pulling it out it puts in the requested number that I put in the number here, or in the box here. Okay, so now we're accelerating to 0.85 Mach. If I want to go back to FMC, or if I want to go back to the FMC calculated speed, I'll just click FMS speed. It goes back to magenta, and we'll decelerate back to that speed. Okay, the heading knob has a couple functions. It has a bank angle limit, which is the little knob in the very back. If you move your mouse to the very back there, you can change the bank angle. You got 5 to 25 or auto. That little caret right here is what it's on. I leave it in auto. Okay, now to capture a current heading, you would push the knob in, right? So the arrow on the up side will lock in our current heading right here, and it turns magenta. If I want to manually change my heading, I can dial it in, and now I pull the knob out. See that? Now we're in heading And now we're commanding over to that new heading that I manually selected. And then go back, we just press nav, and we go back to FMC nav. So remember, pushing the knob in is like capturing the current setting. Pulling the knob will put in the net value that you select. We might as well talk about these two buttons here. Approach and land is how you arm your ILS approach, right? So this arms both localizer and glide slope at the same time. Or if you're in VOR mode, it will capture a VOR radial. Auto flight is your auto flight button to turn on the autopilot. So it basically only turns the autopilot on, or switches it over between the left and right side, autopilot 1 and 2. There is no button up here to disconnect the autopilot. There's only two ways to disconnect autopilot, right? You use the button here on your yoke,
autopilot,
or you hit these auto flight system override switches. Now, this is not the normal method for turning off the autopilot. It is not recommended that you use these for normal disengagements. This is only if you're having a problem with the autopilot, like a malfunction, and you need to turn it off and override it. This is like a hard shutdown of the auto flight system. Don't use these buttons for turning off the autopilot. Use this button here to disengage it, and then use this button here on the throttles to turn off the auto throttle. There's no other way to turn off auto throttle on this aircraft but to use the button right here, or to hit these two, which again is not normal operation. Auto flight also arms your auto throttle. So for example, if I disengage the auto throttle, you'll see the auto throttle system is off. If that ever happens, to turn it back on, you just press auto flight again. And two things happen here, which I don't know if it's normal logic. It turns on your auto throttle again, and it also switches over your autopilot. And I'll press it again to go back to autopilot 1 because we're on the left side. Okay. Altitude knob. This has two functions again. So if you press the top, it's going to capture whatever altitude you're currently at. So let's say you're descending and you need a quick level off, right? You can press that button and the autopilot will capture whatever altitude you selected at that moment. Now, bear in mind, if you're climbing or descending, it's going to take some time for the aircraft's inertia to settle, and the aircraft's going to have to climb back up or descend back down to that manually selected altitude. We'll go ahead and set that back to 360. Now, if I pull the knob, this is like doing flight level change on a Boeing, right? So you got to be careful with this one. So for example, how this works, if you pull the knob, let's say I want to set the altitude to flight level 300, and I wanted to do an idle descent, like flight level change. If I pull the knob out, it goes into idle clamp. Okay, and now we're going to descend to idle thrust. You're going to come down pretty fast if you do this. All right, let's go back to 360.
altitude,
Okay, see how fast we're coming down? Because we basically drop down to idle to do that. So think of pulling the knob out as flight level change. Now, on the same token, if I select the altitude up and I pull the knob, it's going to do a cruise climb
altitude,
up to the next altitude that you select. But we're going to go ahead and set that back to 360. So there you go. Pushing the knob on this will capture whatever altitude you're currently at. Pulling the knob out is like flight level change on the Boeing. So be careful when you're pulling the knob out on the altitude. The last section is the vertical speed mode. Again, you can use flight path angle or vertical speed, and turning the knob down increases vertical speed. Turning the knob up decreases vertical speed. To cancel that out, you hit this button. Alright, so last few buttons are down at the bottom. FMS speed is how you put the aircraft. Think of it like VNAV speed on the Boeing. If you have a, this is going to give you your cost index calculated cruise speed, climb speed, descent speed. I always fly this thing more or less in FMS speed, unless I need to manually slow it down because the ATC gave me a. Oh, hold on, I need to fix something here. Entry out of range. Come on. Alright, well, hold on. Anyway, I'll get back to this. X-Plane 12 high altitude weather's not behaving right now. Let me get back to what I was saying. FMS speed is going to give you your cost index calculated cruise speed, climb speed, descent speed. If you need to go manual, because you need to slow down manually or ATC gave you a different airspeed to fly, this will turn white here. But if you want to go back to whatever the FMC thinks you should be at, you will just click FMS speed and it goes back to magenta. Nav is how you go into your, think of it like LNAV for the Boeing. So let's say we're at heading select, but I need to go back to my calculated navigation course. Just press nav again and you'll see that we go back to nav. So once it turns magenta, you're back on the LNAV in essence. Profile, think of profile like VNAV on the Boeings. This is going to give you the vertical guidance that the aircraft thinks that you should have. Let me try to get this back in there. There we go. This is going to, and then this is going to give you your VNAV. So I like to arm this basically on the ground as well as nav, because I want the vertical guidance to come in as quickly as possible after I take off. It usually starts, it comes alive around 400 feet. The profile will take you from 400 feet on the ground to all the way down to the ground. And this will fly the constraints in the FMC on your flight plan and give you that VNAV guidance that you're used to on a Boeing. So that's what the profile button does. So think of this again, think of this like LNAV, think of this like VNAV. And that's basically the MD-11 flight control panel. If you have any questions about how it works or have more or want to know additional explanation, please let me know. Alright guys, catch you on the next one.